Good morning. Thanks everyone for taking the time to hear my story, or our story, Patriot battery metal. We've had a pretty significant, even 12 to 18 months, but certainly in the last 12 months we've seen something pretty special. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the project, but I guess I'm not sure if everyone's aware. I assume they may well be. We did put some news out here, so I will touch on that as we roll through the presentation here, because it does feed well into what I'm talking about today for obvious reasons. So we are the next lithium district. Lots of people have referenced us. We see the Corvette name showing up a lot, and it's always very flattering to have the many closeology plays we have, but we are, I guess, the original Corvette property, and just unlocking some of the value that we have in that district is pretty substantial. So what are we doing? So we're unlocking what we believe is North America's next lithium district. We've got a massive property, 214 square kilometers, 50 kilometers in strike, and we're really only drilling on about 4 or 5 of that 50K, so we have a lot more prospectivity ahead of us. We've identified multiple lithium-bearing pegmatite outcrops, over 70 now and increasing as we do more site works on the ground this summer. 3 of our 6 distinct clusters have only been touched by the drill bit, and really only one of them, CV5, has been hit really hard with almost 60,000 meters now. So we believe we have the size and the scale, and we also have the quality of our spodumene mineralization and the pegmatite that believes we have something quite special. We're fully funded to execute on our exploration, and we have a proven management team, and Ken does send his apologies for not being here, so you guys are going to have to settle for me. He would like to have been here, but personal and other activities interfered with his schedule a little bit. So here we are. We're in northern James Bay. People, I think, are familiar now with where we are in Quebec. We're adjacent to the Trans-Taiga all-weather, all-season, multi-user road, which is maintained by Quebec Hydro, so it's great to have such substantial infrastructure. We've got the Quebec Hydropower, which is one of the largest hydropower systems in the world, and it enables Quebec as a province to be almost 99% hydropowered. So green, clean power, very inexpensive compared to some of our peers in Western Australia, where we're looking at 3 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour instead of 30 or 40 cents a kilowatt hour, and going up as prices are constantly increasing. So a bit of an overview on the property. So this shows the ground that we've done the work on. This is about 20 odd kilometers of this 50-kilometer trend, and I'll mention this 50-kilometer trend because it's very relevant. We've only really just scratched the surface, and what we found today at the Corvette property is really quite special. So you can see CV5 off to the right there. That's the area we focused on mostly, but we have also done some drilling, about 14 holes at CV13. That in its own right, it's almost, well, now it's 3.8 kilometers because we keep advancing CV5 towards CV13, but it's still a number of kilometers away. It's a discovery in its own right. It may well connect with CV5, but we just have to tease that out with a drill. We also have these other targets, CV9, CV10, and CV12, and 8 is just adjacent to 12. Those are quite significant clusters in their own right. So we will need to put drills in those. We've done the field work, we've identified the clusters, we've done the channel sampling. It just needs the time with the drill bit. So we have a great deal of drilling ahead of us. This shows really where we segue into what we did this winter. So we planned on doing 20,000 meters. We ended up having quite a bit of success with the winter drill program, actually did 30,000 meters. So we drilled about 89 holes. We've just released 62 of them. So that was this morning. We're very happy to be able to report not only have we extended the CV5 corridor to 3.7 kilometers, where it was 2.2 kilometers this time last year. We've extended it 3.7, but the Nova Zone, which is an area to the eastern end of CV5, is now extended to 1.1 kilometers. So in many cases, you'd be happy with just the 1.1 kilometers, but it's a high-grade zone, and we're seeing grades well in excess of 2, even 3%, and in more isolated areas, over 5%. So it's very rich with spodumene mineralization, and we couldn't be happier. So it really is worthwhile checking out the news today because it's articulating the assays that have followed in, showing that we've not only have we extended it, but the grades are fantastic. So what we have decided as a result of these, as a result of the assays coming through, and we only have 27 holes remaining now, we're going to incorporate this whole winter program into our maiden resource, which is coming out in sort of mid-July is the target. So stay tuned for that, but that's a very significant catalyst for us, and we think it's worth the wait of a few weeks to be able to feed this 30,000 meters of drilling at CV5 in. So I won't talk too much. The winter drill program is over. We've done our 30,000 meters. We got 27 holes left to run through. Summer drill program, we got a big summer ahead of us. We're putting a camp in. We're changing or modifying our winter road to an all-weather road so we can have exploration access all year round. That's underway this summer. We're going to continue to drill CV5 out in order to feed into future resource, but also to extend it to the east and the west. We're also going to drill CV13, and rigs are going to be hitting these other outcrops, CV9, 8, and 12. So it's a very busy year, and we're targeting 30,000 meters, but we'll see. Maybe we can do better than that. That's our plan. But we are fully funded for our summer program, but there are opportunities to do even more. So this shows some of the other aspect of our program. I mentioned this before, and I'll keep saying it. 50 kilometers. It's a massive strike length that we're working to. We have an enormous property. We've only worked on the CV5 area, and really we've only done field work in the area highlighted by blue. So all this red area is yet to have any field work, any drill targeting, any channel sampling. We've flown over them. We've seen pegmatites. We know it deserves the time, and that's really what's happening this summer. Last summer, we identified CV13 was a 2-kilometer strike length of connected outcrops, and that's why that deserves more drilling this summer, as well as the initial targeted drilling we did last summer with the 14 holes. So again, the summer program, pretty significant. As we look at the path forward for the property, I've talked about the spodumene mineralization. These crystals are around this size, so they're massive. What that means for us, in many cases, are up to 2 meters in length. You can see them in the outcrop, either sort of plunging out or even just in plan view along the adjacent. You can see the picture there on the left. Shows the scale of that crystal, and that crystal is about this long. So they're massive. What does that mean to us? It means we have a simple process. It's a nice, clean spodumene crystal. When you crush it down, for our mineral processing, we can get away with just DMS, no flotation. So many of our peers have had to, unfortunately, include flotation, which adds a level of complexity, also a level of cost, both in CapEx and in OpEx. So we believe we see what we have at CV5. We've done representative sampling across the whole 2.2 kilometer and see a very consistent mineral process. So DMS is the intended process that we'll use. It will yield easily 5.5% and high 70s recoveries. So we're very excited to have this simple process at such a large-scale deposit that we've identified here. So there is a question that regularly comes up, especially here in Australia. It's probably my #1 favorite question. That may be followed closely behind with why don't we put any sections in our news releases, which I'm happy to talk about separately. But we do have a pathway for permitting in a lake. It's not uncommon. In fact, it's common in Canada to have a lake where you have to contend with the fact that it needs to be drained to access a deposit. It's a well-proven process. It's called an HADD. Don't ask me what the acronym stands for. I'm not really sure, but it's referred to as a HAD. And those HADs are thousands are issued a year. So no matter where in Canada that you impact a waterway that has fish or some species in it, you have to get a HAD, whether it's a culvert for your road to your cottage or it's for a shopping mall. So it's a very proven pathway. Obviously, for a mine and draining a lake, it does involve environmental baseline work. We've been undertaking that since last summer, and our ESG team are confident with what we have. It is a shallow glacial lake. For the most part, it's a couple meters thick, so certainly is a normal process for permitting a mine in Canada, and there are many examples in Quebec as well as elsewhere in Canada. So again, it's something as a mining company or an exploration company advancing down that permitting pathway, we're very comfortable with that process. Some of our peers, I don't think I'll probably spend much time in here. Many here in the room are familiar with our peers, but certainly as you see where we reside within the hard rock developers, and as we move and potentially move towards production, where we may well position ourselves in respect to some of our hard rock producer peers, whether Pilbara and MinRes are ones that I'm sure everyone in the room is very familiar with. Oops, sorry, I jumped through that one. So as a proven a team that we have with a track record of value creation. Ken Bridsons, again, apologies that he couldn't be here to do the presentation, but Ken, of course, former MD of Pilbara Minerals, is very familiar with the process of taking what we have at the Corvette property and taking it forward to production. So that is Ken's background, and he's a fantastic asset to have with the team. My background is the same. I've spent over 30 years in Queensland here, which is why I have such a strong Queensland accent, which I'm sure everyone will appreciate. However, I have spent the majority of my career here in Queensland, working with the likes of BHP and the like, build Korea Zinc up in Sun Metals up in Townsville. So my background is taking projects into production. So again, Ken and I are able to work very closely on this and sharing his experience with the Pilbara, overlaying onto my background. Also, Natasha Garut just joined the team in early this year as our CFO. She comes from an experience within the iron ore sector and also gold, but she has a great wealth of experience with the ASX, TSX listed companies, so a huge asset to the team in moving us forward. As we do become more Montreal and Quebec centric due to where our asset is, and we do have to become more operational out of Quebec. Darren Smith is actually one of the GEOs accredited with identifying the initial report which led us to find CV1, and it was actually identified on Google Earth, believe it or not, from an old report. But it was one line in a report from the mid-2000s that identified that data, and Darren has been with the project right from the beginning, was involved with going through the process, acquiring the ground, optioning the ground, and also even staking some of the ground around it. We've also brought on Alex Drapak as our VP ESG. She spent a couple of decades in Quebec permitting these sorts of projects, former Cisco mining employee, and has a great deal of experience not only in the permitting side but also in the social. So it's very important that we have a good relationship and continue to build that relationship with our First Nation community, which is adjacent to where the Corvette project is. And we have a number of advisors that came on both from Quebec, bringing to us more even deeper knowledge within the permitting systems and working with the actual bureaucrats to move through the various permits that we need, but also Brett Grubsner, a former Primero director, who brings with us an ability to meld what we've learned in WA with respect to hard rock and overlaying it into what we've identified at the Corvette property. We're not going to try and reinvent this thing. It's been done very successful in Australia, in Western Australia, and we're going to bring that to Quebec, and that's part of what I've been doing really since the beginning of Patriot Battery Metals, is identifying ways to meld that experience rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. Bit of our capitalization. Now, this is something that confuses people because of our ASX and TSX listing. So this is all TSX listed numbers. So we have 99 million shares on the TSX, which actually translates to 990 million CDIs. So about 30% of these shares are in Australia. So when you go to your ASX website, it shows us as, I think, a market cap around 450 million, because it only actually registers the CDIs that are down here, which is about 1/3 of the company. So it is confusing. Luckily, we chose a 10-to-1 ratio because the math is easy, because if it had been like 4.8, it would drive people crazy. But so we're basically 99 million TSX shares issued and outstanding. Fully diluted, we're about 135 million shares. We have about 50 million Canadian in the bank, and we also have about 15 million in quite favorable warrants that are due to expire this Christmas or at the end of this year, so that warrant money continues to come in and bring hard dollars. You can see our chart there really since we've listed for, I can't remember the date line on that, but we've had a really good run, but of course, as the markets have had their ups and downs days, we've of course paralleled with that. This is probably the last one, and I'll leave everybody with this one. This is what are we up to. So I've mentioned our maiden resource, so that's coming out in July. We're aiming for the middle of July, and I think people will be pretty happy with that. Maybe I should line it up for diggers and dealers. I don't know. We'll have to consider that one. But we'll aim for the middle of July. We're working through the various technical work to support our PFS. We're also working through the baseline environmental monitoring. And we're also, as part of our PFS, that allows us to have the data to put in what's called a project description. That project description actually results in us kicking off the permitting process. That permitting process then allows us to start heading down towards the path of construction. And right now, we're targeting 2027 for construction, 2028 for commissioning and operation. So we have a big year ahead of us, or a big number of years ahead of us, but the next 12 months is going to be a busy time as we start de-risking the CV5 project, but also continuing to work the remainder of that 50 kilometers as we take it forward, and hopefully our goal is to identify more CV5s on our property. I think that just about sums it up as I run over. There we go. Made it just in time. So top tier location. Corvette project really is something quite spectacular, especially now we've just identified a 1.1 kilometer nova zone, and people want to know why it's called a nova zone, they can ask me later. We have consistent large spodumene crystals, which is very important from a processing, simple processing, high recoveries, low capex, low opex. We think we have something pretty special here. I think that's it. Thanks very much.